Order. If everybody would, please stand and we'll start the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. So why don't we do a roll call of attendance? Clint, are you here this evening?
Yep.
Chris?
Here.
I'm here. Brandy, are you here?
Here.
Angela Farno? Angela Farno? Angie's not here. I'm going to take things a little bit out of order on the agenda this evening, and what's listed as item 1.3, I'll just do that at the end of the meeting. No reason to start the meeting in that manner. The first item on our agenda then is the minutes from our town council meeting of November 16th, as presented in our backup materials. Is there a motion regarding the minutes as presented?
I'll motion to approve.
I'll second that.
Is there any discussion on the item? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes of our November 16th meeting as presented, please indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0. Thank you. We'll move on to old business, which is the second reading of ordinance 100522D as in David. And Doug, if I'm correct, is that is the Bakovic bond resolution?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
It's passed on first reading, and then last meeting, there was not required votes to move forward.
Okay. So that's back for our consideration. I'll make a motion that we approve ordinance 100522D as in David on its second and final reading this evening. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Is there any discussion on this item? All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay.
Aye.
And Brandy?
I abstain.
So we are in the same position that we were at the last meeting. And so we'll just put this item on the agenda for our next meeting and see if there's a change in circumstances at that time. Next item is under new business, and that's the salary ordinance. And Yvonne, would you like to present that item?
Yep, you've all been sent the salary ordinance as, basically as it's been discussed over time, just not been put in the salary ordinance format until now. We basically have a 7% across the board increase. A few people got some additional increases that were talked about during the finance committee meetings. There were some executive meetings where a few things were presented. I put it all in the salary ordinance as such, but obviously you can change things in your discussion today. It was attached to your meeting information.
Okay.
And yeah, so you'll take it from there.
Thank you. Is there a motion regarding the salary ordinance as presented?
I make a motion we approve salary ordinance as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion or comments regarding this item? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Thank you. Next item on our agenda is acceptance of a donation from Charles Haggerty.
He brought in, after our last acceptance, he brought in some more money for the police officers. And we found out through our attorney that we need you to it needs to be in the minutes, and you need to sign a form.
Won't tell them how much, because it was a significant amount of money.
$4,000.
Oh, man.
Well,
Isn't that
and,
awesome?
and the record should reflect that Mr. Haggerty has made prior donations. He's
Yes.
been a very frequent, avid supporter of the New Palestine Police Department, and we
Yes.
certainly appreciate that.
And this, again, will go directly to the police department, will not go elsewhere.
Okay, so we do need a motion to accept the $4,000 donation from Charles Haggerty to the New Palestine Police Department.
I'll make a motion to accept the $4,000 from Charles Haggerty.
I'll second that motion. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries, and we have officially accepted that generous donation. Next item on our agenda is the employee health insurance renewal, and I'm assuming that would also be Yvonne?
I like to talk tonight. Yeah, it's time for renewal of health insurance, as always around this time of the year. I asked Joe Stafford, our agent, to give me a bunch of options. So far, I've stayed with Anthem on my requests for him or from him. The two that I attached to the agenda were the one is the closest to what we currently have. If you'll look at that, in the first column of those three is the insurance that we currently have. The second column, the middle column, is an option 1, and then option 2 would be the one next to it. These seem to be the most feasible. Some of the other options are way out. I think the increase is a little steep, as at 11%. We did increase the budget by 10%. That was before, we have to have the budget approved before this information can even become available. It's kind of a strange thing how the state makes those rules where, they don't open up the marketplace until after we've already had to, go through the whole budget process. So we were close in our assumption that it was going to go up quite a bit by 10%. This first option looks like it would be up about 11%. None of this is exact science, because as time goes on, for instance, I have a daughter who turns 26, she will come off of the insurance. Then if somebody has a spouse that retires elsewhere, they may come on to the insurance. Officer or just had a baby. The baby may come on to the insurance. I don't know, his wife has insurance elsewhere, so I don't know what they'll choose. But these are things that, that will change it. So it's not exact, but these are, in the right direction. So the other option on the third column would be a little less expensive of a raise. What's interesting, it's only a $12,000 for the year difference for everybody if we go with option number 2. However, the costs for the insured goes up quite a bit. All of a sudden, you go from $3,800 to a $6,500 deductible, and for the family, you go from $7,600 to $13,000. There's a 20% office copay, which is, there's a 0 copay in what the employees have at the moment. So there's your considerations as my, what I've picked out. But I don't make the decisions. You can choose not to go with either of those, and then we go and get more quotes, and then we're back at the next meeting to make the final decision. Personally, I'm a big proponent on keeping insurance stuff as stable as possible because it is so important to people, so important to families. You know, having to change doctors if you go with an ITEP program, or the state has a medical insurance as well. It's very, very different. So, not saying that can't be done. It's just, here's where we are with this. If you don't like this, we'll move on to other options.
Yvonne, I'd like to put you on the hot seat. Which option do you recommend? In your opinion?
I think the first option, even though it's significantly more expensive. But I think the $12,000, if I have to choose between these two, I don't think it makes sense to save $12,000. But have that big of a difference in the insurance, the deductibles and co-pays. I'm glad I'm not up there. I find this a difficult thing. I also find it difficult to talk about because I'm on this insurance, right? And I don't, it's not my decision to make. It feels funny. It feels funny for me to talk about my insurance and, you know, recommending the more expensive program, because it's not about a personal, you know, a personal choice here. So.
No, and by me asking you that question, you know, I apologize. I wanted your professional
Yeah,
opinion,
I
not
appreciate
how it
that, and I
affects you
understand.
personally.
Yeah.
And I understand that's difficult because the one kind of crosses over into the other. But I'll also add that I trust your opinion,
I
not
appreciate
just
that.
on your own personal behalf, but I know that you have the well-being of every employee in mind.
I do.
And that's why I wanted to ask that question, not
I
to put
appreciate
you on the
that,
spot.
but I also, you know, I want everybody else to understand that, you know, I try really hard to separate personal from business.
Well, and you know, we've had this same conversation with Steve when he's bidding contracts.
Yeah.
The lowest bid is not always the best bid. Sometimes you get what you pay for.
I also
So-
believe that last year we got, quite luckily, it didn't go up very much.
Okay.
So,
Well, again, thank you for doing the research, getting the
No problem,
information,
and I'll do
presenting
more
it
if
the
we
way
need
that
to.
you did. And I guess now, as Yvonne said, we have the tough decision. We have to decide. And me personally, I hope that we can make a decision this evening and not put that off to a later date. And also, the last thing that I want to do is put one more time demand on anybody else that is an employee of the town to ferret out additional information, because, you know, I realize a substantial amount of time is spent gathering information, you know, responding to inquiries, and there's a lot of demands on your time that, you know, if we can minimize those items, means you can spend more time on other things that are probably more productive.
I appreciate that.
So,
I have a question.
Sure.
Yvonne, again, just to be clear, you said that in looking at the big picture or whatever, you were talking about the first option. But we're talking about all of these plans with Anthem, correct?
These are all with Anthem.
Okay.
Yeah, they all came from Anthem's handy-dandy book of options. that
And
they
again,
sent.
which one is the one that most closely reflects
The
what?
one in the middle, that first option. So the left-hand column is the existing, the
Okay.
middle column is option 1,
Mhm.
the right-hand column is option 2.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify. So it's 11.2% increase to us for the first plan and 3.5% for the second plan.
Yeah.
Okay.
Another question here, so, I mean, everything going through Anthem, was that, I mean, is that just when you talk about the continuity makes it easier? You feel like, is that why that was, because that's, those are significant
That is
increases.
what the town was with when I stepped into this job.
Uh-huh.
Obviously, you know, there had been a lot of turmoil, so my recommendation December of 20 was to for sure keep it as much the same as possible, simply because it's been such a difficult year and we weren't done, and I had to learn about all of these things, so we kept it like that. Last year, we kept it with Anthem because the increase wasn't very large. it was kind of a no-brainer to keep it as simple and as the same as possible. Last year, I looked into going together with the fire department at their request. They came over here, and we found that the fire department has such a fabulously, like, Gucci program. There was no way that we would come anywhere close to it. So, you know, we decided that that was not a good idea to try to, you know, combine it, because financially it would have cost the town a lot of money. It would have been great as an employee, but no. It's that was perfect for the fire department, wasn't the best fit for the town. So we stuck with, again, a similar program through Anthem. And now I went back to the agent and said, hey, what does Anthem have that comes close to this for this year? What are they offering? This is what I, you know, reduced it to.
And I'm sure with everything, with inflation, everything's going out of control crazy right now. But I mean, is the some of those things are almost double. Is that the consent, like everything you're going to look at is going to be probably more? Is that what we're thinking? Or, I mean, I don't want to make you do any work more than necessary either, but if it has to be done, it has to be done.
I appreciate that. I don't mind doing the work. I will work late like I did, you know, Monday I was here until 9, and that is not a problem. Okay, if I need to do the work, I do the work.
I mean, but is the word is going to be necessary, or is everything going to be?
It's hard for me to say because I haven't done that research.
Okay.
I haven't gone to the agent and said, hey, look, we need to start over. If we go and look at other, like the state medical, I think it's called the State Medical Trust, or IPEP, one thing we do have to do is everybody has to fill out all of your medical history, and that's a major job. Every employee will have to do that before they can quote anything. So no big deal. We can push everybody to do that. I mean, it's a couple hours worth of work for everybody, each person individually. Which that would not, the answers, the outcome of that would not be known to any of us. Just so you all know, that will go directly to the insurance companies, and they will, based on that, give us a quote.
So it could actually be worse.
It could be,
Okay.
yeah. But I don't dare, you know, guesstimate
Okay.
at those.
So I do have 2 questions, or I guess observations. So essentially, from what I see, what this ends up being is if we go with the plan you're recommending versus the second one, it results in like somewhere between $40 and $50 increase per person that we are paying as a town that's carried on that insurance. So if it's 1, it's between 40 and 50. If it's 2, it's closer to 100. 3, it's closer to 150, and 4, therefore. Okay. So that's what I see per employee. They're not assuming for, I mean, a little bit of an increase, but we are assuming for the ones that have family have a little bit of an increase.
They
But-
also pay a little bit.
Yes, right. But the other, you know, the singles are just $1. But the cost for the town per person in that family is between 40 and 50 per person. And, but with that comes lower, you know, deductible, out-of-pocket, co-insurance.
Yeah, the deductible still
Yeah.
goes up from last year.
Yeah,
right?
and no,
but-
I get it, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you'll see in the bottom, you'll
Yeah.
see that it goes from 2,856 to
Yeah.
3,000 and 6,000.
Yeah, I understand. I think all of us
Yeah.
in employment have dealt with this, you know, year after year after year, and everybody's, I think, trying to do the best they can, but trying to balance the bottom line. And I do have a question, just in general, about Anthem, because I don't have, you know, this insurance. Have we talked to our employees, you know, about, that carry the insurance? Are your claims being handled? Are they being appealed? Are you having hang-ups with all of that?
I have not had those conversations
Okay.
with them, but I've not heard a single complaint.
Complaint?
Which
Mhm.
is the same as a positive, if
Okay.
no complaints.
And from my
Okay.
perspective, I
Mhm.
never had them before,
Okay,
and I do now. And I mean, it's no fuss kind of a situation. I mean, I have 0 complaints dealing with that. I had Golden Rule before for our
Okay.
personal insurance. You know, and long before that, as
Yeah.
a small business owner, we didn't have insurance, and I'm telling you, that was bad. So,
Well,
but yeah,
yeah.
Anthem as a whole, I mean, I have no complaints
Okay.
that I had to deal with.
So that was one of my questions. You know, in this day and age, a lot of folks are going through challenges with different plans. And so if there was feedback that, you know,
I've not heard that
Okay.
at all since September of
Okay.
2020 from anybody.
all right, thank you.
Any other questions or discussion?
Yeah, one more. And how, yeah, I know you talk about all the employees. How many people are we talking about who are using this insurance?
You see the whole
It's in our
list right
spreadsheet.
there on your, on
It's in
your
our link on our
handout.
spreadsheet on agenda.
Never mind.
I mean, there's, of course, the part-time employees don't get to partake.
Yeah.
And we have 3 part-time employees. And then there's one, other employee that decided to go on, the spouse's insurance. So, but that might change again this year, you know, again, until we have a decision made. And I let them know, that's when we know, or that's when they can tell the insurance agent yes or no on going back on the insurance.
Okay.
And is there a new standard on how long folks can carry their children on insurance?
Up till age 26.
26.
I know that firsthand. My
Wow.
25-year-old turns 26
It's
in
way
March,
below it, too.
Okay.
and it goes till
No.
the end of the month
socialism
of their
at its best.
birth month.
I appreciate that.
Socialism
And it
is
no
a
longer
good
has to do
Your own
with
insurance, that's my
Yeah.
college enrollment, trade
No,
school.
not as
I'm
much
just,
now.
I'm just clarifying. Okay, 26, huh? My
Yeah,
future.
plan
I see
right
my
for that.
future very, very quickly here.
Crazy.
Never
Thank
get
you.
rid of them.
Not that I want to, thank you.
Any other questions?
No.
Okay. I would like to make a motion that we elect option 1. And I know that that comes with cost. But I also think that that's what is in the best interest of our town employees. And so I make that motion for that reason.
I'll second that.
Now we have a motion that's been moved and seconded. We could have further discussion. So is there any additional discussion?
Well, the only thing I've got to say is, maybe not since Yvonne's been here, but before, we tried to compare 15 different policies with all different companies and everything else, and we always went back to the one we had, so I'm not
Right.
sure, you know, even if we do that, that we'll, you know, save any money
Exactly.
in
Just
this
waste time.
economy.
Okay, yeah, I mean, really doesn't sound like, I mean, $50 a person
Yeah.
doesn't sound as bad as I thought, so.
Yeah. Okay. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Motion carries 4-0. Thank you. Next item on our agenda is consideration of a food truck ordinance, or discussion of a food truck ordinance. Who is presenting the food truck ordinance?
Well, I don't think we're presenting it, but I think Clint, and we have some concerns over the ordinance that we have. We introduced the food truck ordinance, and now we have a taco truck in front of the old liquor store that is there, and is it permanent? And by our ordinance, you know, how long does it stay? And, you know, I think we
Yeah,
have some
in
concerns.
our old ordinance, they couldn't even park overnight. But in this new ordinance, there's nothing called out.
Yeah.
And so, and, I mean, I'm not gonna tell you what you read on Facebook is true or not true, but there's other people that wanna put food trucks in town, and if you let them park there indefinitely, we're gonna have some
And,
indefinitely.
you know, at least, you know, my understanding of a food truck ordinance and food truck permits is they're, you know, very short term. It's for a one-day event. You know, there are some functions that might extend over a weekend or a couple days, but, you know, I don't know how you could have not noticed that there's one particular truck that's there a lot of time. And so is that in compliance with the spirit of our ordinance, and how do we amend it so that we address situations like that? And, you know, it's probably good that we address it now as opposed to waiting until there's 5 or 6 more. So, I'm certainly open to suggestions.
Well,
Was
like I
this?
say, our old ordinance that we had before, when we changed from the $200 permit to the $25 permit, you couldn't park them overnight. Now, that might be a little harsh, but I would say, you know, I'm just gonna say 72 hours or something like that. I mean, I don't know what anybody else thinks, but I'm
So
thinking it-
no more than 72
or 48,
continuous hours.
48 or 72.
But then also, without an exception, I mean, maybe you could have, if you say it's 48 hours,
Yeah.
and then somebody came with a reason for an exception,
Well, if we have a
Well,
festival
like
lasts
Summerfest.
longer than
How
that,
about,
Yeah.
how about per event? You know,
They're
if you have
here
an event
longer.
and it's throughout the
Yeah.
duration of that event, that
Yeah.
makes
The-
sense.
I
So
think
an
that's in there,
event-
yeah.
okay,
That
because.
was in the old ordinance too.
It's a week long, it's a week long. If it's
Yeah.
2 days,
Right.
it's 2 days.
But just having one
I
sit
don't want to
there
park there the whole time.
permanently,
It's not- no.
you know, I mean, we have a lot of brick and mortar restaurants
Yeah,
that,
it's taken away from them.
you know, and if that, whoever operates it wants to build a building, rent a building, occupy a space, be a little bit consistent with what we have, then I think they're on equal footing and competing on an equal basis. But to let somebody just, you know, not pay rent, not pay, you know, real estate taxes, maintenance, insurance, what, all of the expenses that come with operating a business, certainly puts them at a significant advantage and a disadvantage to the rest of the businesses. So, you know, that's,
I like the idea of per event, or if not, there's an event that there's 24 hours.
Well,
Does
let,
that make sense?
yeah. Let me ask a basic question. I mean, we have an ordinance, okay? And there's, you know, applicability, and there's rules and standards already set up for this. And one of them is that any truck, okay, mobile food vehicle, right, has to have a permit from us and pay a fee. Has anyone visited the food truck since it's been sitting in front of there? They have? Did they apply for a permit?
Yes, that's what I've been trying to,
Yes.
he has the permit,
Okay.
Yes,
he
all-
for
came in,
$25.
the gentleman came in here, he has to show, you know,
Liability.
Proof of
liability
insurance.
whatever. He didn't have liability insurance. So I told him, I said, you have to have this. He says, why and how does that work? He says, I'll go get it. He had issues with his agent. I talked to his insurance agent. The insurance agent didn't actually do a good job, in my opinion, as a small business owner and my knowledge about liability insurance. This guy was sold some bogus insurance. And so, anyway, I advised him to go to a different insurance agent and get proper advice, come in here with proper liability insurance. I told him why he needed it, how it worked. He was very willing, he was absolutely attentive. He came back several more times to make sure he got it all right. And he's got all his insurance. He's a very nice gentleman, in this particular food truck. And he will do whatever we ask him to do. I personally don't think it would be really fair for us to say, hey, we just changed the ordinance, you gotta go. He rented that space from Mrs. Linging, I'm sorry, I don't know her name, but I think for a full year. So
So is there a reason he's not inside the building?
I don't know. That's a question I didn't ask him. I would say the building is probably not set up to be a commercial kitchen, but that I don't know. I know that he's very willing. I would think maybe you guys want to go talk to him or ask him to come in here. He's very willing. His name is Alberto Sixto. Very nice gentleman, very respectable. New at the game, in my opinion, new at the game of running his own business and how all this works. So I'd say have a conversation with them.
Well,
You can have a
I,
conversation
I,
with them.
I understand, but
Gotta get the ordinance changed.
the property owner has a right to rent property to a food truck to have a permanent year-long hospitality business on the property who didn't have liability insurance to begin with.
Yeah, he had
But did
liability.
as soon as-
I know he's worked,
Yeah.
yeah, he had to work on it, I get it.
Well,
But then what?
He did immediately.
But then what, so then what if, the rest of the companies in the town of New Pal decide they're gonna rent a 1/4 acre of the front or side or back of their property to a food truck or another vendor, and that, I mean, I'm just concerned about the big picture. I have nothing against the taco truck. I mean, who doesn't like tacos? Okay, but I'm concerned about the big picture of where does this start and stop?
Bill, can they sublease?
Can who? I mean,
Can any business just sublease a particular, can Needlers sublease a tent out there and leave it out there all year to sell whatever,
well, that brings up another subject, is the
fruit vendor?
rental property in town, permits to have rental property, and you have to have the inspection, you need an inspection, what you're gonna rent it out for and everything else. Those are ordinances that have been passed by a lot of other towns
Yeah.
because of the prevalence of rental property in their towns now. And some towns require, every time you rent a property out, you pay a application fee and it includes an inspection of the rental property to make sure you're not I don't know what you'd call it, a slumlord or what, but, and I think that's something we have to look into. And that would have, in other words, somebody that wanted to rent something out for a food truck to sit on for a year would have to come to our planning commission and tell them what they were gonna rent it for, and if, I don't know if that's a permitted use or not.
Well, I mean, that's something to think, and now this is probably a
Yeah,
little bit off.
I veered off a little bit.
No, I'm gonna go, Clint, no, I'm gonna veer even farther off, because, there was a fruit stand that started with people selling only items that they grew. And now it was as I understand it, a very, very, very wonderful family, great intentions. The proceeds were used for mission trips. I mean, it's like saying no to Mother Teresa. How do you have anything negative to say about that? However, it's now evolved into a full-time business with products coming from Mexico and Guatemala and Argentina, and you can get items that are out of season because you're getting them from somewhere else in the world. And maybe this is at a later point, we might have to address that, but it's no longer your mom and pop fruit stand. I'm selling the tomatoes I'm growing in my backyard. It's a full-time business, and to the extent they're out in the bank parking lot, it's kind of the same consideration. It's not a food truck.
Well,
But
yes, it is. In our ordinance, it would be. It's any stand or anything.
Oh, okay. Well, so then maybe it is a good analogy. So, I don't know if this is something that we want to try to tackle and come up with an absolute answer right now, or now that it's on the horizon, we have in our backup materials the food truck ordinance as it's currently adopted. I think it would be well worth the effort to, look into it, read it, maybe come up with some suggested changes, if any, and we may look through the whole thing and say, it's okay, and,
Right.
I don't say either way, but, what do you think of the thought that we put this on the agenda for the next meeting, give everybody some time to think about it, and, just see where we want to go with it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the only thing is I'd definitely like to change it, but we have to consider the
But
guy who's.
exactly
over
how to
section.
change
The
it.
parameters.
Yeah.
Well, I
Doug,
know
do
what I
you,
think per event.
would
per
it be
night.
fair to ask Doug maybe to pull a couple of examples, maybe that maybe address something like this? Because again, I mean,
Well, I'm sure
if
that we're
it's-
not the only
if
town
it's-
with a
if
food
it's
truck ordinance.
compliant, I mean, that's
Well, we're the only
fine.
town with a $25 permit.
But I, you know,
Permanent truck, I don't like that.
I don't want to be biased, but I don't want to see the Girl Scouts and the cookie
Well,
season
it says, that's
Become a
called out in our
food truck.
ordinance now.
and the popcorn for the Boy Scouts become, dealers can't let them sell it, and you can't stand out in the parking lot of Fry and sell cookies, because, I mean, you know what I mean? I don't want to go like, we're, they are a nonprofit, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think we have an exception.
Okay, good, all right. I just don't want to see us dive off the deep end with, you know, no cookies, no tacos, and no popcorn. I mean, it's not much fun.
I would,
I-
it'd save me money.
I know. I mean, I need some sometimes during the meetings myself, but,
We
you
have
know,
a
especially
Mexican
popcorn.
restaurant that sells
I would
tacos.
disagree. I think too, there's probably should be a time frame on a mobile
Right.
taco truck.
Yeah.
Right.
When did the gentleman get his actual permit?
September, late September.
So maybe, you know, if the permit's good for a year,
Grandfather him
maybe we
in.
grandfather him in,
Right.
him only, up until we get this corrected.
I
I
got
don't
you.
think you can grandfather in food trucks.
Okay.
No.
He's not causing us issues unless he's causing somebody else issues.
Actually, it's tacos.
Actually,
are
tacos are
wonderful.
delicious.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we don't know the good tacos.
We do have another Mexican restaurant here, like you said, though.
Hey Doug, you think you can grandfather in food trucks?
You wouldn't believe the things that have been grandfathered in ordinances and laws in the past, Clint, so I'm just saying.
How about this? I'm gonna make a motion that we table this item, we put it
Yeah.
on the agenda for our next meeting, and, you know, and that will give everybody some additional time to look at it and try to come up with some constructive thoughts. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of tabling item 5.42 and be put on the agenda for our next meeting, please indicate by saying aye.
Bye.
Don't need to ask for opposed because it was 4-0. So we'll give that some more thought and consideration and see what we can do with it for the next meeting. Next item on the agenda, item 5.5, is Resolution 120722C, as in Charlie. This is a resolution approving the 2022 allocation area, which is an expansion to include the new Palestine Commercial Center. You know, I think everybody was here, most everybody was here, but this is an item that started this evening at 6 o'clock. It was passed by the RDC, it went to the Plan Commission, it passed through the Plan Commission, and now it is coming to the Town Council as required by statute. And in a nutshell, I don't think we need to read the entire resolution, but as I understand it, it would activate the allocation area for the property that is north of 52, south of the railroad tracks, east of Mount Comfort Road, and west of the creek that is right next to the Needler's grocery store. So it's that area, and I think it was Jared that explained it best to where I could understand it. And of course, you know, I'm a big baseball guy, and he said, here's a good analogy. We have created a 262-acre economic development area, and there's maps of that. Jim has a map. Anybody wants to see that 262-acre map, Jim will be happy to share it with you. If you're inside that area, you're on the team. You get a jersey. If you are an active allocation area, now you're not only on the team, you're in the game. You're on the field, you're actively participating. Not everybody that's on the team is on the field. So as best I could understand it, and I thought, you know, Jared's analogy to a baseball team or any sporting team was a pretty well-stated analogy. So what this does, it takes that area and removes them from just having a jersey and puts them into the game. And then if you want to ask, what is the game? As I understand it, this is a resolution that would direct the taxes on the improvements within that area to be directed to the town's redevelopment commission to be used for purposes that benefit the entire town, that allocation area, support development. It's not limited to that, because that was a specific discussion earlier tonight. But Doug, help me out. Have I kind of explained what it is we're being asked to vote on?
Yes, the RDC increased the economic development area and amended the economic development plan. Plan commission just confirmed that the economic development plan was in line with the town's plan for development. And so now there is a declaratory resolution before the council. This is similar to previous actions that the town has taken, in that there's a declaratory resolution and then we'll have a confirmatory resolution later. So you'll see this again. It is different in that there is no bonds or funds being issued to private parties. This is, as you just stated, it would just take those increased tax revenues and it would go to the RDC
Okay.
for use in the town. So
Other than the benefit to the town as a whole, that property owner isn't asking for financing or tax abatements or any, they're not asking and they're not receiving anything.
that is correct. If that were to happen, they would have to go through the RDC and
Right.
start the processing. So that's not what's occurring here. The property owner was also here at the RDC meeting and mentioned that without the increased economic development area and what he suspects the uses that would be, he would not be able to, he'd have difficulty getting people, clients into developments.
Okay. So, that's what Resolution 120722C is about. Why don't, we'll start with a motion, and then we can open it up for discussion amongst ourselves. I'll make a motion that we approve Resolution 120722C as in charge.
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Now it's been moved and seconded, so it's open for any further discussion, questions, anything that anybody would like to address before we vote on it.
And Bill, just for the council's notice, Jim Treat is here as well from Cronin Associates, the town's financial advisor, so if there's specific financial questions, Jim can address those as well.
I got a question. How come we don't make the whole 200, I thought the whole 262 acres was an allocation area, was a TIF area, and why don't we do the whole thing? Because why would we just keep coming back nitpicking here and there when we could do the whole thing, which I thought we did, but I can't find it in our code anyplace. Somebody needs to tell me where our economic development plan is in our code and see what was actually said.
And Jim, do you want to address that? Because, and only in my conversations with Jared, he has explained that within the 262 acre area, if there were to ever be residential development, if you activated the whole area or anywhere within an activated allocation area, if you have residential, and I mean purely residential, apartments are not considered residential for tax purposes. But if it's, say somebody builds a house or a subdivision within that acre, it's my understanding that creates substantial problems. And can you, what kind?
Well, wait a minute, let me say something first. If it was all an allocation area, like I thought it was, they couldn't build houses in there anyway because the formula for building houses would be impossible to meet. Huh?
I think that depends on the
It's
zoning.
rezoning.
It does anything to do with the allocation.
No, it's a TIF area. You
Well-
can't build houses there unless you meet these criteria, and they could only build about 4 houses per 5 acres, according to our thing, so they wouldn't do that anyway. Or they could only put like 5 houses in that 40 acres. It's
Well,
outside of
and
town there.
I think inside the 262 acre area, there are currently residences. There are houses in there. But they weren't built
No, not new ones.
after, the creation. But again, my understanding was if anybody were to build a residential property in an active allocation area, because there's statutory penalties and clawbacks and all kinds of things that come into play that are very troublesome. And that is just as I understood it from talking with Jared.
It wasn't at one time, Bill, but it has become that way because of the way the state changed how residential properties are treated in standard two. And what I'm trying to say is, without getting into a lot of the nitty gritty of this, is that it used to be that the county would just ignore residential properties if it was in a TIF area and say, well, we're not capturing, we're not tipping, we're just going to ignore them like they aren't there. So the AV stays in the base, it stays in the tax base, it's ignored. The state changed that about 3 or 4 years ago, 3 to 5 years ago, and we're making them include them in all the annual calculations of neutralization and everything. And what happens is, as values for residential parcel properties go up, they take away from captured AV, and it can be significant if you have a lot of new residential development. And I've seen it, and that's why one of the things I'm doing now and have been doing for the last several years is convincing cities and towns to go back and amend their TIF areas and take out the residential parcels. So I just did one this week where we took out 300 residential parcels out of a large TIF area. Because we're seeing, now that it's developing, we're seeing the negative base that's creating, the way the system works now, it just takes that negative value and restores it back out of captured commercial increment. The two don't have anything to do with each other. It never really worked like that before, but they've changed the software and what the counties have to use, and that's how it's working. So it's really become that's what Jared was referring to. It's really become a big negative. It didn't have anything to do with what RDCs did or what counties did. It's just the state changed how they were doing it. So it really is not advisable to keep residential, unless it is a residential seniors and stuff like that. So.
Okay. So Jim, would you have any reservations of us activating the entire 262 acre area, or should we continue to proceed as we identify commercial development sites?
You can go either way. I thought, and again, I've not been to very many meetings here, because my partners have covered these meetings, but I thought you were taking the approach of being very cautious in your tipping of areas, that was the sense of what the town wanted and what the council and the RDC thought that the people and the business wanted in New Pal. That they wanted a very conservative approach and they wanted it looked at piecemeal. I'm not trying to contradict you because I wasn't there when it was set up.
Well, I can't find the document, so I can't contradict you either.
I've heard some secondhand from Jared and Buzz, that's why. But from my experience, typically when you create an allocation area, and it's not necessarily as large as yours is relative to the size of your town, I have seen it. I have seen ones do the whole town, littler towns even than yours. But it's typically done, as Clint said, when you create an allocation economic development area, you also make one of the same an allocation area. That would be more the standard approach.
Mm-hmm.
So Clint's right on that. If you're taking it from other units or other cities and towns or what you've seen or talked about, but you're not required to do that, and that's what I understood.
Well, that's why I say I don't know what we did.
Right.
What you did, you created a big allocation,
Yeah.
economic development area, and a comprehensive plan that fits that plan.
Yeah.
But you didn't go ahead and create the allocation areas and start capturing the taxes. That was a misunderstanding if you thought that was the case. That's not the documents that you adopted.
Well, I haven't seen the document we adopted, so I have no idea. But I do
It
know
wouldn't be very hard
that you
to-
can't put housing in a TIF district
Right.
and you can zone it all we want to, but you still can't put it in there because if you read the formula for houses, in about that 40-acre area, according to what's been developed in our town, you could put about 5 houses. So I don't think anybody's going to do that.
Unless they were big houses.
So, you know, I want to see what we actually made up, and I'm wondering why we don't, if we have to allocate the whole area, why don't we allocate the whole area because that area, I mean, I don't care about the houses that are already there. We don't have anything to do with stuff that's already there anyway,
Okay.
But Jim's
unless they
saying,
build a pole barn or
but
something.
Jim's
and-
saying he recommends we
Well,
remove
no,
those
if
parcels
If you would decide to
if you activate, right?
create allocation
Okay.
areas for
Mhm.
more of your economic development area,
Mhm.
or all of it,
Mm-hmm.
you would want to go and exclude
Right.
existing residential properties from that,
Mhm.
definitely.
Right.
You would definitely want to do that, because they're just, the way they're handled now, it just mucks up the whole
Right.
system. and
Absolutely.
It's just not what you want to do. So that would be one step you would have to do in that process. I don't know how many there are, but there's probably quite a few.
Well, in my
But
opinion,
it's doable, because the county usually, they can run a database that will show you
Right.
classifications. They'll give you the 500 codes.
yeah.
You can exclude those from the ones you put in there, so it's up to you guys.
Well, how would that have any effect on us anyway if that stuff's already built in that area and it wouldn't?
It does. What it does is if you have big increases in AV, like we saw in the last year or so, that existing houses that have been there a long time had huge, pretty significant increases in AV.
Mm.
It is taking away.
You mean
from
like
the
20% in 1 year?
tip. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's taken away from the tip, and it doesn't make any sense to me either.
Yeah.
That's the way the software works now, because of the way residential parcels are treated, if they're activated if they're included in an allocation area.
Okay.
And so, I'm telling you from my experience, that is definitely the case.
Okay.
So,
The only thing about that is those houses that are in that economic development area, if they come to us and want to change to a commercial property, then we'd want to include them anyway. And chances are, we've already had 2 in the last month, so we could have more. And I'd rather go the route of let them go ahead and pay their taxes the way they were paying it before than appropriate them on this area and then have them come back and change the zoning, because basically, whenever somebody comes to us and wants to rezone a house that's in this economic development area to commercial, we've done it. So here's what I want to know. Where in our code is what we approved so we could read it? And if it's not an allocation area, which everybody says it's not, why don't we do it for the whole area? And if we want to not include the residential, that's fine. But I'm going to tell you right now, as soon as they change the to a commercial property, then we'll have to redo everything again.
Okay. Any other?
so when you.
Questions or
let me ask-
comments?
clarify, Wait, are you talking about homeowners that change their existing house or whatever into a business?
Yeah, we've just had one that were 2 residential houses they tore down and made a
Right.
commercial property.
Yeah,
Right.
but you're not really gonna capture anything there, because if they're existing,
Right.
if they're not really making really major improvements to the house,
When they tear down a
Changes
house
to
and
do
build
it.
something new, that's a major improvement.
it might affect it, but I think, I think you're probably splitting hairs there. I don't think you're gonna.
Well, and no, I think the
Probably not
property,
worth it
the
for
property that
houses,
Clint's
but-
talking about, there were 2 residences.
Yeah.
They tore them down, they were zoned residential, they came in, the properties were rezoned commercial, and you know what? Next year, the redevelopment commission might have to consider whether they want to make that an active
Yeah,
allocation.
that's not in our economic development area right now, is it?
It is,
It is?
it
Yeah.
is.
Oh, okay.
It absolutely
It
is.
goes all the way
I
down.
do want you to, if you would, consider approving this, because if you don't get this one done now, you won't get any of the, well. you
Well,
won't get-
I'm for this one, but,
Yeah, but you want to.
But we're looking at maybe a global.
Yeah, I'm looking
something
at
to
a-
think about.
yeah.
In the future.
because
Yeah,
here's, I thought that it was already like that.
yeah.
So I'm mistaken. But we've already had a fourplex built at the old folks' home that's not included in this TIF now because it was not an allocation area, right?
Correct, if it was
They made a
built,
mistake there.
So,
yeah.
So what he's, I mean, just make everything, that would make sense.
so
Well, I
we've
mean-
already lost out on something I thought we already had.
Well, and so that is definitely something to consider, but that's not what the request is this evening.
Right.
Okay, anything else? All those in favor of approving resolution 120722C, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0. We'll move on to department reports, and our first one is Chief Ely. Bob, what do you have to share this evening?
Well, I don't talk about my guys a lot, so I'm gonna brag on about 4 of them. I have 2 gentlemen that are on the current SWAT team, so we've kind of joined up with the county, and I've got some tactical teams we're involved with. Sergeant Wally has been with them for a number of years. Well, he just got promoted to the assistant team leader, so he's third in charge of the entire SWAT team for the county. Very impressive. Wade Whitaker just joined the SWAT team and passed with flying colors. They all 100% accepted him, so we have 2 members on our Hancock County SWAT team, our joint tactical team. That's part of Greenfield, Hancock County, us, Cumberland, pretty much everybody in the county. Sean Brady is on the FAC team, which is the Fatal Accident Crash Team. He has been responsible for about 7 reconstructions in the county. I think he's had 3 fatals he's had to reconstruct. Tough job, good man. And of course, our canine officer, Tyler Batten, he has utilized that dog very well since we've got it. We've taken a large amount of drugs off the streets, and he's made many civil apprehensions with his canine officer. So if you ever see those guys, tell them attaboy, because them guys have really done a wonderful job for the town.
Great, thank you for sharing that.
I have a question for Chief. So I'm part of the Hancock County Safety Commission because of my role in my full-time job. And I wanted to ask if New Pal would consider having an officer commit to attending that, maybe survey, because there's a lot of different law enforcement departments represented there, and I think you're on the mailing list, or someone is. I think maybe not.
Yeah.
Craig Morse coordinates it now.
So are they maybe using that with the new SRO over here at the high school?
No.
No, he's not participating.
No, New Pal, kind of the school represents the school, and like there's law enforcement and public safety and kind of social service, drug prevention treatment, representatives from those areas, and there's, there's often, representatives from the different police departments, and maybe even, and they don't meet every month of the year.
Now, I wonder if
But-
Wade used to be on that when he was doing the SRO work, maybe?
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to reach back out to Wade.
Okay,
because Wade is
see if he'd
also
be
our-
interested.
Yeah,
Okay.
Wade also does our public information. He's taken over our Facebook.
That's
He's
right.
also taken over
Okay.
our Twitter page.
Okay.
So, yeah, he'd be a phenomenal guy for that position.
I mean, can you maybe send me his direct,
Email,
privately?
phone number?
yeah,
Oh,
either? Yeah, that'd be great.
I can do that.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Anything else for Bob? Thank you, Bob. Jim?
A couple things. I like what Clint says, let's get the Band-Aid ripped off this and get it one and done. But I think we do have to go through there surgically, because that 40 acres we talk about, that's zoned R2.
I want to revamp my estimate on that after reading this again.
It's my turn,
They
Clint.
could, wait a minute. I'm going to revamp my 5 houses to less than 30 houses.
There you go.
Still big
Yeah.
lots.
You could do 2 if they're big enough.
Well, But I do think that we have to lay some eyes on
reading
that
through that
pretty
again
tight
right now, Jim.
and get that done.
Okay.
Second, on the 19th, we meet with Commonwealth for the first design phase of the sewer plant, so that's it.
Great, thanks. Steve, what do you have to share with us this evening?
Well,
I see blue,
By the
I see,
agenda,
I see
looks like I
blue
have-
under your name.
Quite a bit to talk about, but as it turns out, the two resolutions that I wanted to get passed and signed tonight probably aren't going to happen. One of them is a resolution adopting an ADA transition plan, which the town is going to need, and the other one is a resolution adopting Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. I have both of these transition plans done and have sent them to my contacts at NDOT. Over a week ago, they just got kicked back. And I've made phone calls to 4 or 5 different people at NDOT trying to get answers. I just want them to have eyes on the plans to make, because it's like 50-page worth of documents, to make sure that nothing's missing, that we're compliant with everything. So I had Susie kind of put these on the agenda at the outside chance that somebody would get back with me and we could get this wrapped up, and it doesn't look like we're going to. I also sent copies to Doug, take a look at.
Okay, so we're not ready to go forward with those tonight.
Hopefully, next meeting, I haven't received any notices of non-compliance or anything like that, so
Okay,
we're good.
So we're trying to.
thank you.
Trying to adopt a resolution from about 60 years ago, we still haven't done.
Yeah, from
Well, it sounds okay.
1964. 64 was a good year.
Long time.
We've already done that before, haven't we?
That's what I would.
Well, these things are like living documents,
Yeah.
and things change all the time.
Okay.
Yeah, I know, I see
Okay.
they changed the curves on our sidewalks they didn't approve 10 years ago.
Yeah, they're all, Prowog has
Because they
changed
needed more
the,
work or something.
design standards for those now, so
Yeah.
yeah, they all change. So yeah, they have to be updated, every 2-3 years. So.
Okay. Thank you, Steve.
Mhm.
Yvonne, what would you like to add this evening?
I have a few things, sorry. For one thing was forgotten on the agenda. Obviously, it's jam-packed, but the executive meeting, we have minutes for that need to be approved. Obviously, there's really nothing on there. The only thing it states is that under new business, we spoke about a litigation issue and a personnel issue, and that's it. Can I hand this to you to look at that, or do you, it's little or nothing, but it
Well,
needs to be.
yeah, it's usually one sentence.
So, if you can, approve that and move on, that'd be great. If not, put it on the next meeting. And then
Hey,
if there's
I'm
a
on the
few other
first
loose items, nothing. Okay.
Oh, do you want to, I just wanted you to look at it so that you could see, don't sign it just
I'm signing it.
but read it and then pass it down. 'Cause it's
I only
one
put
sentence.
3 letters.
It's okay.
Is that okay?
Yes, it's okay.
All right, I confessed. Okay, all right. I'll scribble if I need to.
And we'll attach that to the minutes so that everybody has that information.
Right. Well, and it's one sentence. We're reading it just to make sure, because it wasn't in the backup materials,
Yeah,
no
and I'm
problem.
sorry for that.
But you know what? We can take the time for one sentence. We'll be
It's my
okay.
mistake for not catching that until I went through my big stack here as I'm sitting here.
Because I was only there for a few minutes of that. I was even there till 25, so
That's-
I should probably say not taking part in this.
Okay, having considered the minutes from the executive session, I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes as presented. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, is there any discussion? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
No?
Abstain.
Abstain?
Yeah.
301, and the minutes are approved. Thank you. Yvonne, anything else?
Yep, a few
And
other
now we'll let
things.
Brandy finish signing.
Thank you.
All right. We just did payroll, council got paid. Another project that we had going this year was a fund conversion. All the fund numbers and some of the names were adjusted. On the State Board of Accounts dictated that all the fund numbers and names need to be more in line with what all the other towns are using. not just us, but they want to kind of standardize that because it's easier for the auditors. So, just because it's easier for the auditors doesn't make it easier for all of us, but that apparently didn't matter so much. We completed the fund conversion. If you now look at any information that you get from us that's financial, the fund numbers went from, the first 3 digits went to a 4-digit number. For some of them, if it was Fund 101, which is our general fund, it now says 101. For Fund 2, it went to 220, whatever. But then it gets screwy. The 615 fund that we talk about regularly, about paying off the million, where we only owe, by the way, $200,000. I've got $119,000 in the bank to pay that off here soon. Don't think we'll hit it before the end of the year, but we're close. 615 fund is now 6210, just so you all can get used to that. Other than that, nothing's really changed other than that we have to now code everything differently. And when you're looking at the paperwork, it looks slightly different.
It's been a rough week.
It's been
Goodness.
It's been a rough couple of weeks, yeah. And lastly, the best news is our budget was approved by DLGF as submitted, the Form 1782. It was sent back to us with no changes. We signed off on that, returned it back to them, so the budget is set for next year without any changes.
Great.
So that's all I got for you.
All right, thank you. Next item on our agenda, our public comments. So if there's anybody in the public that would like to make any comments, please come up to the podium, give us your name and address, and share with us anything you'd like.
Hi, everybody. My name is Denise Abshire, and I live at 5904 West Country Way in New Palestine, Indiana. And I just wanted to kind of piggyback on the comment that was made about the food trucks. I think it's really important now that we kind of determine where we want New Palestine to be 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now. We've been residents of Hancock County for 25 years. We recently moved here about 2.5 years ago, and it was because we left McCoursville because of all of the development being what we considered not good for our home value, with all the warehouses being built and the traffic and everything. And we want this to be our permanent home until, they carry us out on the stretcher. But we really want to see this be an area that is conducive to a Fishers or a Carmel or Westfield, and make sure that we're doing everything the right way. And food truck, and what comment she made is, I'm a snob, I guess, but I just don't think that's the right statement that we want to make, probably in our community, to attract, hopefully, what I hope is the type of builds that we're wanting to attract in the future. So I strongly encourage, as a member of the community, that we really think about what we put there and what we allow before we have like a whole line of them stretched out from here to there. I just think when somebody first comes down to the community, you want to really set a good impression, and we only get one chance to make a good impression, make the right impression. So I'm just hopeful that the council would really take that seriously.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Come on up.
Hi, Greg Spivey, 4546 South 600 West, New Palestine. I don't really have a comment. There was no chance for us to ask questions about that thing you passed for the TIF.
And
There wasn't, no.
Okay, well, no, I'm not complaining. I just wanted to ask a question. So you added the thing that includes needlers now to that. Is that going to capture taxes that are additional, that are improvements made from this point forward? Or
Yes.
is that, it didn't take the taxes that are already being paid?
No.
They
The
can't.
Needlers building and the Fifth Third building, because they were assessed before January 1st of next year, because they were assessed before then, they're not included in
Okay,
this.
so it didn't take any tax money away from schools?
Well, I don't want to say that either, because, and if Dr. Lantrip was sitting here, she would tackle you for saying that. So, no, I would not agree with that. And this is my understanding, because it is approved this year, that would mean that going back to January 1st of this year, that's when it starts, because we did this in the year, and you go back to the beginning of the year. And what that really means is the Taco Bell building and the Tony D's building, those two buildings right now are the only things that are affected. Now, they're built this year, they'll be assessed next year, they won't start paying taxes until the year after that. So in 2014, when the property owner, 2024, I'm sorry, thank you, my numbers are bad. 2024, when taxes are paid on those two buildings, that tax will go to the redevelopment commission. Not one penny goes to the owner of the property. There's no financing, no rebates, nothing. So come 2014, the school would say, we lost money.
But not,
2024, I'm so sorry. 2024, they would say, we didn't get the money. And what I think is, not this meeting, but at the last meeting of the redevelopment commission, there was a subcommittee or a focus group created so that members of the redevelopment commission are going to meet with the school, with the fire department, with the library, with any other taxing entities that might be affected. And Jim was here earlier. I think he was probably more correct than Dr. Lantrip. It's not dollar for dollar. The impact isn't as big as what it might have been thought to be, but there is an impact. And so it's up to the redevelopment commission to make sure that when it gets those funds, they're used in a manner that benefits the entire community, including the school. And I'll go way out on a limb here and share with you. I'm one of 5 members of the redevelopment commission. My absolute highest top priority, bar none, is a sidewalk system from one end of town to the other end of town, so that kids, customers, if you want to walk from here to the grocery store, you shouldn't have to cross out into the middle of 52. And there are areas that you do. So to me, having a sidewalk system like that benefits the school. So with a straight face, if the RDC says, let's put in sidewalks with some of this TIF money, that does benefit the schools. Because a couple of years ago, when a student was hit on Main Street, now, you know, the reason for that was the kid was crossing the street, so a sidewalk wouldn't have made a difference. But we have 2 areas, just, let me get my directions right, because I'm terrible with numbers, just to the west of McDonald's is a crime scene. You literally have to walk in between guardrails on US 52, taking your life in your hands to go from McDonald's to the grocery store. I don't care which side of the street it's on, makes no difference. I'd love to see a safe sidewalk system so that people don't have to get run over in the middle of 52. So, man, I might have gone way overboard, but does that help?
So the gist of what I want to know is, in the future, like, you know, I know how taxes are delayed, but the money that's currently coming in from Needlers and the bank
Will not be affected one bit.
into the future.
Unless they have improvements made, and we'll collect that, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And now it's
Thank
also,
you.
now I think the last thing I'll say is, let's say, and I'm just gonna pick a number out of the sky, if the Needlers building is assessed at $3 million, if 5 years, that assessment goes up to $4,005,000, that extra $5,000 is gonna go to the RDC,
Right.
not to the county, and then redistributed to the school. I mean, that's my, so, full disclosure. So, yeah, anyone else?
Yeah, my name is Kevin Knight, 3368 Applegate Drive, off Gem Road Countryside. I grabbed my wrong notes, so I don't have my full notes of plans, but I'll just try to summarize. Done a lot of research. Thank you to everyone, Yvonne, Bill, who's answered all my questions about the TIP. Do want to say I come out publicly supporting it. I think it's a great idea. I think it's a way to kind of pick and choose how we're going to progress as a town, as Hancock County. Of the donut counties is the most rural and the most likely to grow. You see how TIFs are being used in Fortville, McCordsville. They're usually done in quite convincing manner. Reports from ranging from Indiana to Iowa say TIFs usually in rural communities are overwhelmingly positive. We've already seen from, I think it was Jared last week at the RDC, that the assessed value of Hancock Regional has already gone up over projections. I know y'all don't like to be compared to Carmel, but Carmel TIFs, for example, have already been assessed $66 million over projections. And the citizens of Carmel, as I think the citizens of New Pal, really value education. And I'm not quite sure how it would be done here, but at least in Carmel, their citizens have voted twice to raise the amount of earmarked funds on assessed value to go strictly to the schools at, like, I think it was like $100 per, or sorry, doesn't matter the numbers, but for every $1,000 of assessed value, a certain amount of that would go to the schools, bar none. Now, I think that goes through their RDC, but it is earmarked specifically for school funding. I think that's something that we should look into here to secure those funds for the schools, and then obviously look at other infrastructure, police, firefighters, towns. So I think it's a great idea. I think it's a good way to control our own destiny as we continue to grow, which is going to be inevitable anyway. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I am Doug Farno. I live in Cypher Creek. I am the husband of Angela Farno, Councilwoman Angela Farno. People have probably seen me here for several years. I've never spoken. I have done that for a reason. In no way, shape, or form do I want to give there any impression that I have any impact on my wife's views and points. And by all means, everybody knows my wife. She certainly doesn't want me to do that, nor does she need me to do that. She's quite good at handling herself. However, as I don't control her activities, she doesn't control mine. So I am here to address your comments, Bill, about your allegations in the last meeting. First, I wanted to say, thank you for, it was such a joy watching tears roll down my daughter's face, when she was reading that article in the newspaper about how, her book was personal to her. Now she got to read, in the newspaper about her crash and how it made people feel and the way it looked like Chief Ely was being directed in a way that he didn't want to, which I don't believe. I'd love for Chief Ely to talk after this if he wants to. He doesn't have to. I've always looked at him as a good and outstanding man. So I want to thank you for, being able to watch my daughter in that setting. That was wonderful. Also want to thank you for divulging my personal information about properties that I own and, now maybe being a target for people who may want to rob somebody who looks like they might have, something to go after, since you're talking about it in a public setting in a newspaper. And, I'm pretty certain I haven't done anything to you, anybody involved with that situation. And I'm certainly sure my daughter hasn't as well. Didn't deserve that. So, about the allegations, I'd like to talk about those as well, since they're out there in the public, and they're in a newspaper and spun in a way by Christy Deere that was pretty much ridiculous. I feel like happy to have somebody else talk about that if they'd like. The allegations are against me. I called Chief Ely. It was my idea to call Chief Ely when my daughter had that accident. And for those of you who don't know, there was a discussion in the last meeting, and it found its way to the newspaper. I am the one that called Chief Ely because I have a lot of respect for him as a person. I knew my daughter would feel comfort knowing, somebody of his standing and trust, that she'd feel good about that, him going to that side. The first thing I said to Chief Ely is, my daughter's in an accident. I'm not exactly sure if it's in your area or not. And Chief Ely kind of indicated it was just outside the area. And he said, but I'd be happy to go take care of your daughter and pick her up and make sure she's okay. And the first thing I said after that was, in no way, shape, or form do I want you to do something, Chief Ely, that you shouldn't do. And if you are, I'd be happy to call one of my neighbors. because I don't want you in that position. And, you know, Chief Ely being Chief Ely the way he is, just being a nice guy, wanting to take care of things. And I appreciate that, because it meant a lot to my daughter, and it meant a lot to our family. Because for her, that was a traumatic event. So, I do appreciate that. Was willing to do it, and that was great. And then, the second allegation against me of bribery, I would love to know if you felt that as well. No reason to bribe anybody about anything. I'm the one that told Angie to do that. I said, once I found out that it might be slightly, whatever, 100 yards or whatever it is past your jurisdiction, I said, hey, make sure he gets gas money if that's the case, because I don't want the town to be out of anything. I don't want there to be any perception there's an issue. So I did that. I'm the one that said that. And I'm the one that offered my vacation property. And just for purposes of open discussion, I offered that 2 or 3 months before this accident ever happened. I don't know if you remember that. It was in this room. And it was after one of these meetings. And I'm not going to divulge Bob's personal information, because I'm not going to do that. I mean, there's got to be some class and some dignity in the way you go about things in these meetings. But he had some personal interest that I thought would be conducive and good for him to maybe have that type of situation. So I offered it to him. And I actually offered it to Jim Robinson the same day. And it started to have this open discussion, and the clerk treasurer, who happens to be my neighbor, heard all this. And she actually said, and she knows me, which I appreciate that as well. She said, hey, that's kind of confidential today. Let's not talk about all this information. I don't know if you remember that or not, Yvonne, but it was the same date that I offered that up, way before any of this happened. So it's just almost comical and sad that it got to this point for maybe personal reasons or whatever they may be. You see, we don't have any personal property outside of our home here in New Powell. We don't have any financial interests. We don't have employers that might have a need to do something in this community that would benefit us. We don't have kids that are juveniles or all these things that you might need bribery for. So there's absolutely no reason for us to be in that position. And I do have, again, I'd love to hear any insight if you feel differently, because I certainly would never do that to you. But I think, to me, it's just Christy Deere spinning an article in a way that she wants it to look like, because that's what she does. So, having said that, the last thing I do want to say, I do want to take this opportunity to tell everybody how proud I am of my wife. She's gone through quite a bit of adversity. You guys know that. If you happen to have seen her lately, she looks about 40 pounds different than she did 3 months ago. There might be a reason for that. But despite all that, she sticks to what she believes is right. She does not let anybody bully her. She does not let anybody influence her to do something that she doesn't agree to do. You may not like the way she does it. You may not agree with the way she does it. But her principles are better and stronger than anybody that I've ever met. She protects the people that can't protect themselves. That's why she's here. She's not a politician. She doesn't need money. There's no reason for her to do this. Both me and my family are very proud of her. Thank you.
And, hey, Doug, before you leave, and, because I know you had said you extended to Bob the opportunity if he wanted to talk after this meeting, I would hope that after this meeting, that you and I could talk for just a couple minutes, because I'd like to talk to you off the record, if you're willing to do so. No.
You inserted me into the situation.
Well, and you know, the first thing on this agenda, or one of the first things, I was prepared to go into a 25-minute tirade, and I don't plan on doing that this evening. But, you know, again, I'd rather have a conversation that's not on the public record, because, you know, there's some things that I can agree with, and there's some things that aren't noble and aren't proper, and we don't have to go into in detail, although I'm happy to.
What I said was true, there's nothing to talk about, and I would love to hear
Well,
if Bob feels that's true or not. I mean, I'm not trying to be on the spot about that.
well, and it's not up to Bob to decide.
I mean,
Bob
if
was
I
put
said
in a
that,
position he should have never been put in. He shouldn't have been put in that
I
situation.
said, did you hear what I said? I said, if this in any way, shape, or form puts you in a position that you shouldn't do it, don't do it, and I will call somebody from the Palestine. very simple, very straightforward. It's called friendship. It's called doing the right thing. It's called dignity and humanity. So that's what it's all about. It's
Okay.
not just
Well,
trying to
and-
try to
and-
find a way to get a deal through when you're using every bullet in your gun to try to make it work for yourself. It's just simple, doing the right thing and being a good person. That's
Okay.
simple.
Well,
It is, Doug. I appreciate that. But you know what? I've heard from both sides. I've heard people around here being accused of stealing money. I've been threatened in my office by your wife, for
No,
what?
I believe you threatened her, Jim. I believe you were absolutely.
Well, let's ask Bob here. We've got the police report. I'm just saying.
Look, I
Hey,
did my
hey,
public comment.
let's,
I would love for him to, if he wants to say whether I'm telling the truth or not, and if not, we go to the next
Well,
step. But I mean,
let's go on to the next guy.
Yeah.
Is there anyone else that would like to say anything this evening? All right, well, let's go into council, we're at council member comments. I'm gonna start, and again, I had a good 20, 25 minutes worth of a thrashing that I was ready to unleash, and, I'll reconsider that. Perhaps I'll do it at the next meeting, but I will say, again, for the public record, that the people that are on this town council are here for the right reasons. And, smearing goes two ways, and it's real easy to be a keyboard warrior when you're sitting in your basement and full of all kinds of confidence and say the most ridiculous, stupid things that you could even imagine, things that are 100% false, lies, and then expect not to get a reaction. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail because, believe me, I had a 25-minute speech I thought was pretty darn good. I'm not going to give it this evening. Because I hope, and I'll tell you the reason I'm not, because I don't think we're yet at scorched earth. We're damn close. And if people can't come to this meeting and do their job, then this council should consider adopting an attendance policy. And if you have a legitimate reason for missing a meeting, that's one thing. But when you're pulling a Patrick Bauer 2011 move and doing a walkout because you're not going to get your way, we're one of 5 people. We come, we show up, we vote, we voice our opinions, and if you don't get your way, tough. You're not always going to get your way. But when you make it so personal and vindictive and ugly towards others, and then you don't expect you're going to get a little bit back, that might be something to reconsider. But if we can't have members of this council attend, then we should adopt an attendance policy like the city of Carmel did and remove members that don't care enough to come to meetings. And there are 2 ways to participate at a meeting. And it's, again, Doug, I heard everything you said about being so nice, but when Angie attacks Chris, well,
I can't talk about it's a HIPAA violation. You know what that means?
no, it's not a HIPAA violation for Angie to attack Chris because he's participating by Zoom and she wants to cost him his job.
Your statement was, she doesn't care enough to be here. You have no idea.
Well, then let me back up. You can participate by Zoom. And when I say that,
You still don't understand.
well, she was healthy enough at the last meeting to be texting members of the audience about items in front of the council. You can participate remotely but not in person, or participate by Zoom for this. Again, I don't think that that's proper. But in any event, like I said, I'm not going to go down that. But if you're going to take pot shots from the side, expect to get a couple back because there's some hammers being thrown. And, I've been the recipient of quite a few. And, at some point, enough's enough. Come in, vote, do your job, or get the heck out of the way and let somebody else. That's all I have to say. Chris, you have anything you'd like to add?
No, I think I'm good. I think I listened to him.
Clint, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I'm not going to rewrite state law.
Brandon?
Well, there's a lot I'm processing, but I'm gonna put a lot of those things back in the database. and kind of go with what I had jotted down for tonight, a few things that have to do with our, business here. So one of those is a couple of issues I've been thinking about, and I hear mentioned often, and it's something that I committed to, and I talked about being important in 2017 when I was chosen to fill Jonas's position, another Jonas, and then I was reelected, and that is the town infrastructure, sidewalks and amenities and things that keep our residents and our children and our families here. And one of the things I think, we're talking about how TIF allocation areas can generate that, through what was done, and maybe in the other however many acres minus however many acres we did, forgive me, because there's a lot of things going through my mind right now. But there are grants, and there are, things like that available that if we commit to research and if we commit to look into, that are available to help us with that. And being on so many mailing lists for the town, I often see discussions and opportunities and advertisements for those types of things. Even some areas that we don't always think of. It's not always just environmental management or the state here and there. It's national corporations and organizations for beautifying parks. And so I think as a whole, it would be responsible for us, as a team, as a leadership team, or, even folks in the community who have thoughts or ideas or experience with maybe those such things to talk about. Like, if that's our only hope, right? If that's our only hope for funding for the future, we need to have some more hope. I mean, we need to have some more options. And ironically, coming from the person who writes grants, that's why I think about that. And so I think that we need to talk about that. And who is that? Who is that here, within our town that has that capability or skill set? And if not, then do we consider having someone? Because the town of Cumberland and many other communities have invested in someone with that expertise, to help propel that along. So I'm trying to look at that vision of safety and infrastructure, for our future. And, I often joke when I go into the middle schools and in my role here and talk to the kids about the future, I often joke that the number one request is what? Chick-fil-A, right? So everybody jokes about, we always joke about that. It's another Chick-fil-A class, but my gosh, we got Washington Street and Greenfield. Our day may come, right? But I hear Chick-fil-A, and then I hear splash pads, And so maybe it's time. We think about developing some of what we have and those smaller amenities for our community, and our grants the way to do it. So I just want us to kind of have those kinds of discussions and for the betterment of the community. I was going to ask Jim, or Joe as I called him most of the night, from Crone about Clint's asking, I swear we had this TIF allocation area. I swear it was there, right? And then Clint was like, it's not? Let's understand how it was, and was it 40 acres or 262, and is the residential exempt or this or that? We're all learning. But I would like to know if Jared knew this, okay? How did Jared know this? Okay, there had to be some document, some ordinance, some resolution, some legal document, right, that he gathered this from. And so as Clint said, it was before 2017, it was before my time. I'm not going to say how long Clint's been here. I hope he remembers, but
Vaguely.
Yeah, vaguely, right? It's all a blur. But I'd be interested to know, right? I'm curious myself if it can be found.
We can pull up the paperwork.
Sure. Yeah, I'm just interested to read.
Those would be resolutions. I
Yes.
was going to say that when Clint was asking.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be in your ordinance. It wouldn't be
Right.
online.
But it would be a resolution
Yvonne should be able to
that we
find
should
it.
have, okay.
And it predates
Yeah.
us as law firms.
Because I would, of course, yeah. So I would just appreciate seeing that as a council member myself, that learning tonight. Yes.
Jenny is the ordinance and
Queen?
resolutions guru
Okay, that's
of
good.
the town.
All right.
She is working on fixing
I appreciate that.
information that's
Yeah.
wrong, and we're at least identifying where the issues are and
Mhm.
reorganizing all the resolutions and ordinances.
Okay.
She is absolutely amazing, and we will look for it.
Okay.
She will look for it. But we'll get more information to you. The whole TIF thing and anything RDC is super complicated. If I've learned one thing, is that I don't know squat about anything
Oh, sure.
since 2020. There's so
And
much to
everyone
learn.
is different,
Absolutely,
Yeah.
right.
which
Okay.
I think that a lot of people do not understand.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
And I do have one more thing. So I don't always have a lot of things, but sometimes I do. So I have heard often, and I've seen expressed on social media or email or text or phone conversations, and in my own experience as prior to 2017, my primary experience with government was sitting in those seats, right? In my full-time job in tobacco prevention and cessation, right? Advocating for a cause that, or a health code, right? That the majority of a community seemed to want. And never imagined that years later, we'd be where we are today in our community and many other communities. But not only that issue, but with my Girl Scout troop, when there is an issue that they care about or is important to them that might be on an agenda, or growing up there may have been something. And I have attended basically every single municipal, city, or county meeting in each area of this county and in many other counties through my 20 years in my job and Girl Scouts and everything else. And what I'm getting at is I often hear comments such as Mr. Spivey acknowledged tonight, and I've seen at other times that there's a perception that we as elected officials at times make decisions and vote on matters prior to hearing what the people of our community feel about these issues or think about these issues. And I like to call that the advocacy work, okay? Not the lobbying work, the advocacy work. And so there are times when we're required to have public hearings, Doug, and and there are times that we're not necessarily required to have public comment. As a matter of fact, state law doesn't dictate that you must ever absolutely take or allow public comment, right? But we choose to. And we can choose to do it at the end. We can choose to allow it during a topic or not. And so the moral of the story is, I think that we as a council, as well as any other elected body, I think should consider, and I'm not referring to any one specific issue. I'm referring to a time that I remember there was an issue that was so important and critical in communities. And it was so difficult for decision makers to make a decision on what was in the best interest of the community or what the majority of the community wanted, right? And as voters, are we always thinking or motivated that our representatives should make decisions based on what they hear from the community? And so, again, I'm not talking about any one specific issue because I've heard things like this for 5 years. And I just think it's fair that maybe we consider in the future if it's, I remember the trash issue that we had a few years ago, like considering consolidating trash service again, picking one, making everybody go with the same one and pay for it, right? And the place was full, okay? Because there were senior citizens that said, hey, I don't make very much trash. Me and Susie next door, we share a can, right? And so while this may seem like a long story, okay, my point is that maybe at times we need to say, hey, if there are a lot of questions on an issue, if there are a lot of concerns on an issue, and we have to make a decision that impacts our community profoundly, maybe we ought to consider, do we allow for public comment? If asked ahead of time, if asked during the meeting, or do we stick with after all the voting occurs? And I'm not being sarcastic at all, I promise. But after all the voting occurs, then the citizens have a chance to ask, well, what did you do? Or, well, why did you do that? Or, we didn't have a chance to really make our voice heard before you made that decision. And so I just want to acknowledge that. Because I've been there, professionally and personally. And I just think we need to think about it.
Okay.
So.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Let's move on to my favorite part of the agenda. Consideration of the claims. And tonight, we are being asked to consider claims number 24588 through 24656, all as presented in our backup materials. Is there a motion regarding claims 24588 through 24656?
Make a motion to approve claims 24588 through 24656.
I'll second that motion. So it's been moved and seconded. It's open for any discussion. Are there any comments, corrections, concerns regarding any of the claims as presented in our backup materials?
I've got a question on claim 24607.
Okay?
It's a $1,000 refund on a building permit that was on our agenda at the last meeting but never discussed. So I want to know how it was approved.
What do you mean it was on the agenda?
It was on our agenda for the last meeting. In fact, in the minutes, it says it was tabled.
I think we decided that it was not something that had to go in front of the board.
Well, do we have any kind of, what do we have that tells us we can refund a building permit?
The building never, it never happened.
Did
Like our whole builder, he
They got a
left,
building permit, right?
and then it never got to them.
It never did get approved, is my understanding.
Well, I mean, when you get a building permit, I want to know what ordinance or what we got that says we'll refund that if you decide not to build.
I think that that they didn't get the permit. We received the money and some
The builder
paperwork.
left.
It didn't happen, we gave them the money back, the permit was never issued, is my understanding.
The school hired the fella. He came in to get the permit thinking that he had the job. The job was too big for him, so the school decided not to go with him, and somebody else is coming in to do the job. So somebody else is gonna pay for the permit. We're gonna get the funds for it. We're just reimbursing this fella that didn't get the job. So.
And I want to know how we did that. I want to know how we decided we could give $1,000 back. And evidently, it wasn't decided when it was on our agenda for the last meeting and then taken off of it.
So is that what we're voting on tonight? I mean, it's in the claims to be approved.
The guy came for the permit. We put it on the agenda initially thinking, well, does that need to be voted on separately by the council? And then it was decided that since the permit wasn't issued, that it was just refunding money that somebody'd given us for something that we didn't provide. So we gave them the money. It's the same with if somebody pays a sewer bill and then moves, if they paid ahead, they get that money back for the month if they didn't actually use the services, and the new owners pay that. So that's kind of the same here. The permit wasn't issued, so we refunded him the money. The permit will be issued to the contractor that will actually get the work done, and then that'll be shown as income again. So this was shown as income and then refunded, just like I said with the sewer that happened.
And that's why I say, if we took the money for the permit, I want to know the protocol to give that money back to somebody.
Well, I think it's just like she said with the sewer.
No, I want to know the protocol. No, it's not like the sewer. The sewer, those people paid ahead, and we refunded the money when they sold the house. That is not the same.
Okay.
Clint, I think here, I understand your example, and I think that there should be some authority to refund money if a permit has actually been issued. There wasn't a permit actually issued, so I guess I would ask the
Who
question.
said the permit wasn't actually issued?
That's what they just said.
Right.
That's what they just told you, so.
Well, how come it says refund building permit?
Because it was paid as a permit
Paid as a
fee.
permit, it was never issued. And so I guess to play out your scenario to the extreme, if somebody put down $100 to say they wanted a permit, but before the staff didn't even do anything, they took it back, do you think you still get it? I mean, they didn't issue a permit, so you didn't.
They gave the town a check for $1,000 without getting a permit?
They never got a permit, they never got what they bargained.
They
for.
gave the town $1,000 and never were issued a permit?
Because they withdrew,
I'm not buying
they
that.
withdrew the request before the permit was issued. Is that, okay.
If the scenario that you presented was correct, I think your question is legitimate, if a permit was issued.
Yeah, if your staff spent
That's not
time
what I'm hearing.
reviewing materials and giving it consideration or inspecting it, then I think we've earned that fee. And so if somebody
If you
paid,
deny it, that's different.
yeah, if somebody paid for a permit, we evaluated it, and I'd say no, then we denied it. I don't know whether they get the permit feedback or not. It's no, if you pay the fee, it doesn't guarantee you're gonna get the permit.
If it's
But if we
denied,
put the
it's
time in
different
to
than if
evaluate it-
It's paid and then pulled because the guy was told by the guy that hired him that, yeah, you don't because you're not gonna.
You're not getting the
gonna let
job.
you to work.
Okay.
And, I mean, it's one of these things where we by state statute have to deposit the money within 24 hours from the moment we get it. So we do that, and then, you know, if the next day or whenever we hear, hey, you know, I'm pulling that request, we have to refund the money. At least that's, you know, I think that's the only right thing to do is to I mean, if it was reviewed and denied, that's a different story. That's not the story here.
And Clint, to your point, if you want us to, we won't give them permit, we won't accept any funds until they get the permit.
Well, but then you put in a lot of time and effort considering it, and what if they run out of money? I think you should pay the fee when you apply, and in a situation like this, if you withdraw it, you get your money back. But if you don't, I mean, you know, if it goes through, and you get the permit issued, and then you decide you're not gonna go forward with the project, you lose the permit fee, because we've done the work. So that's where I see this one at, but
I don't see the protocol involved in giving money back without, and if everybody wants to use the sewer, we do see it does come to the town council, the sewer refunds. So if you want to use that, even though it's not even near the same.
yeah, and
It
that's
is
what,
here.
that's what it's for us to approve.
I see what
So-
you're saying.
Okay. Well, anything else? Any other claims or items or issues or discussion regarding the claims?
Clint, just acknowledge.
Yeah, I mean.
So are you wanting, is kind of your.
I want to know the protocol.
Okay, well, that's what I'm asking. Okay, be gentle, okay, with me. I'm asking, see, I made you laugh. So, would your goal be for us to develop, perhaps, or consider a protocol so that it was in writing and for the future of such instances, whether sewer or permit or whatever? Would that be helpful?
I don't know, because that would be in the future.
Well, and just for the record, I'd be
It's
against,
preparing for the future.
I'd be against any such protocol. If we've earned the fee, it's ours. If we haven't, we should refund it. It's the right thing to
It's
do.
doing the right thing.
I mean, it's,
It seems to me like there's not a question about it.
so, I don't know that we need $1,000 that badly, but that's just my opinion. And I don't think we need a protocol. We didn't earn this particular fee, and now we're being asked to approve the refund. I mean, maybe it would have been nice to approve it in advance, but I don't think you have to hold somebody up waiting for their money for a council meeting.
Well, I just wanted to acknowledge Clint's concern and clarify if, it would be formal protocol in writing, so everybody was on the same page, or,
And it may very well be
That's-
that there's
that's
a
all
protocol somewhere in that
Yeah.
filing cabinet.
yeah.
So.
Okay.
Okay. Any other Questions or comments regarding the claims as presented? All those in favor of approving claims number 24,588 through 24,656, please indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, indicate by saying no.
No.
Motion carries 3-1, and those claims are approved. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I will motion to adjourn.
I'll second that. All those in favor of adjourning, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you. But we do have